When most people want to pay homage to their cultural icons or research aspects of their own personal cultural history, they usually go to places such as New York or Paris or London. But my cultural icons don't come from any of those places. And you really wouldn't say that I was most people. So that is why I went to Sheffield.
So here I am, made it to Sheffield. It's a very beautiful day today. I've got to go and find my hostel now and check in.
I stopped to take a few photographs on my way to my hostel in Upperthorpe, the first of which is the Castlegate Bridge, a rather colourful landmark in central Sheffield. Another famous landmark is Castle House, otherwise known as the former Co-op building. It is now the host of the National Video Games Museum. The statue you see outside affixed to the wall is that of Vulcan, the Roman god of smiths and metalworkers. And because of Sheffield's association with steelworks, it has become a sort of unofficial emblem of the city and its people. A takeaway I passed in Upperthorpe, I just thought the name was rather amusing.
Well, there I am, Russell Scott Hostel, and this is where I'm going to be calling home for the next 5 days. I am absolutely shattered. It was a long walk from the bus station. It's day 2 in Sheffield. It's a bit rainy out. I didn't come to Sheffield to find a story. I came to Sheffield to find my part in a bigger story, which is why today I'm going to Chesterfield, because Chesterfield is the birthplace of Pulp guitarist Mark Webber. Over the years, I've met several of the members of the band. I met Jarvis a few times, I met Steve twice, I met Nick outside the Highbury garage after the fan club gig in 2000. I kind of met Candida at the ICA, but I was being really stupid and I was waving a camera in her face, so I kind of got warned off by her companion, even though, and this is a very weird coincidence, I used to go to sixth form college with her cousin, but the member of the band I've had the most interaction with over the years is Mark. This is because he used to run this club night at the ICA every month called Little Stabs of Happiness. This was sort of, it was half a film screening. You'd have 2 or 3 short films, and then you'd have like a cult feature film. And then for sort of the rest of the night, it was sort of a 70s, 80s school disco type thing. And I kind of went to it every single month that I could from 1998 to 2000, as well as Little Stabs of Happiness. I also went to some of the film programs he curated at the Barbican for the Underground America exhibit and the Warhol look. And in 2000, I went to a film program at Battersea Arts Centre called The Day of Reckoning, which was a series of short films sort of dealing with death. I wrote a very lengthy and thorough review for Day of Reckoning for the Pulp People fan club magazine, and if you go on Pulp Wiki, I think you can find it. It's autumn 2000. I think it was either spring or autumn 2000, so go and have a look there. The last time I saw Mark was on stage at the Motorpoint Arena. The last time I spoke to him was at a film screening in 2011, so 11 years ago. And I don't want to go into details, but the reason for that is entirely my fault. That's kind of one of the reasons why I'm making this film, as a sort of apology to him. But I have this really bad feeling that I might just be making things worse. So this is Fargate, and just behind me, over here, I'm not 100% sure, but I think this is where the famous Goodwin Fountain used to be. It's the fountain down the road that was mentioned in the song Disco 2000. Ironically, the fountain itself was torn up in 1998, and what's going on here is some sort of building site or some sort of construction site now, so I don't know what is going on here, but there you go. That's what happened to the fountain down the road. So this is Sheffield Town Hall, not to be confused with Sheffield City Hall, which I'm probably going to have a look at later. So this is the Crucible Theatre, home to the Crucible Studio Theatre, made famous of course by the snooker, and it was here in December 1983 that the wicked players that comprised Jarvis Cocker, Magnus Doyle, Tim Alcard, Ellie Ford and Steve Fabian performed Russell Sr.'s surrealist play The Fruits of Passion. The details of the play I'm not too sure about, except it featured certain rather bizarre stage directions, such as leave vacuum cleaner on stage until the audience gets quite restless. The Fruits of Passion culminated in a scene where Jarvis had to eat a plate of fake dog feces at a job interview. Well, hopefully fake, because according to the BBC Radio 1 1998 documentary on the band, at one performance the dog feces looked a little too realistic for Jarvis's taste. Not so much a fountain down the road as a waterfall by a train station. Only there's no waterfall today. First saw this when I came to Sheffield in 2010. I don't know why the water feature isn't running today, so Sorry about that. So I finally made it to Chesterfield. It's about 10:15 in the morning. I should have been here about 2 hours ago, but I kept stopping to take photographs on my way to Sheffield train station. Now, originally when I started planning this journey in early July, one of the reasons I wanted to visit Chesterfield was to try and find the Chesterfield Arts Centre, because on January 29th, 1986, the then 15-year-old Mort Webber, who was then known as Zig, first met Pulp and interviewed him for his fanzine Cosmic Pig. But according to Mark Sturdy, author of Truth and Beauty, Chesterfield Arts Centre got knocked down a few years ago. But you know, I'm probably going to find some places here that are going to pique my interest, and one of them is right over there. So there we have it, one of the most striking architectural landmarks in Chesterfield, the spire of the Church of St Mary's and All Saints. It's even more astounding sort of seeing it close up than sort of seeing it from a train window. Now, there's lots of stories as to how the spire got its distinctive shape. One is that the devil was misshod by a blacksmith in Matlock, and he was in so much pain he jumped over the spire and kicked it with his hoof. Another story is that a virgin got married in the church, and the spire was so surprised that it bent round to have a look and got stuck in its current position. And the story goes that if another virgin was to marry in the church, the spire would straighten itself out, which I think is rather a slur on the good people of Chesterfield, to be honest. So we don't really know why the spire is like that, but the most logical reasoning is that the framework was built with unseasoned wood, and they put all the lead tiles on top of that, and because of some unseasonal weather, the heat and the weight of the tiles eventually bent the spire into how we see it now. But you know, who said facts should get in the way of a good story? This is 35 Stevenson Place. It looks like it's a cocktail bar now, but back in the 1980s this was Planet X Records. For the music buying teenagers of Chesterfield in the 1980s, there were four main record shops: Hudson's, Star Trek, Connections and Planet X. And what makes Planet X kind of exceptional is the people who ran it. One of those people was a guy called David Hayes, otherwise known as Dids, from local band The Bland. And the other was a Nottingham-based poet called Henry Normal. You might have heard the name before, but you'll have definitely heard of his
writing partner and co-founder of Baby Cow Productions, Steve Coogan. And Henry and Steve have been kind of responsible for a lot of the famous comedies over the years, things like the Mrs. Merton Show, The Royal Family, 24-Hour Party People, and of course Alan Partridge. So I don't know, if these walls could talk, what stories would they tell me? This is the Winding Wheel Theatre, one of the most famous theatres in Chesterfield. And according to Pulp Wiki, Pulp played here on the 26th of February 1988. This is 13 Marston Street. It's the real-time music shop and real-time live venue. But back in the 1980s, this used to be Chesterfield Conservative Club. Now it's a little strange that Chesterfield would even have a Conservative club, because back then the local MP was old Labour stalwart Tony Benn. It was here on the 31st of May 1986 that Pulp played a concert here, organised by the 15-year-old Mark Webber. Mark was supporting them with his own band, Siegfried's Magic Box, as well as The Bland, Trash That Car, and Henry Normal. The only eventful thing that I was doing when I was 15 was trying not to fail my GCSEs. I was talking to the guy who runs Real Time Music, the shop underneath, and I asked him what his name was, and he told me his name was Tony, so naturally I had a bit of a start, but I don't think he's old enough to be Mark's dad, and it would just be too weird of a coincidence if he was. So this is Walton Dam, and this is kind of the end point for my journey across Chesterfield, but it's also the beginning of a longer journey, because I am going to at least try to walk the 13 miles between here and Forge Dam. I've left it a bit late though. It is 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and I think by the time I get to Forge Dam, and it's going to take me 4 or 5 hours, I think by the time I get to Forge Dam Cafe it's going to be closed. So why am I doing this walk? Is it for spiritual enlightenment? Is it an act of atonement? Am I challenging preconceived notions about people with my body type? Well, I think I'll let you decide that. I'm gonna have some lunch and I'm gonna try to get going. But it's gonna be a bit hard, I think. Both the batteries in both my cameras are dead. I'm at like 25% battery on my phone, and I'm gonna need that to, find my way to Forge Dam. The thing is, if I get really lost, I'm just gonna get a taxi. So, wish me luck. The town crest of Chesterfield. banner underneath reads the word Aspire, and I still can't decide whether that's supposed to be inspirational or probably the single worst dad joke I've ever read. Day 3 in Sheffield. I'm going to go off and explore the city proper now. It is raining again. To be honest with you, if I'd wanted this much rain, I would have gone to Manchester. Clegg, a rather unfortunate name for the city of Sheffield, and an even more unfortunate name for anyone who's been following politics since 2010. This is Fagan's, and although it doesn't really look like it, this is probably one of the most famous pubs in Sheffield. It's a sort of a live music venue, but I don't think Pulp ever played here, at least not according to Pulp Wiki anyway. But it is a regular haunt of Richard Hawley, so I suppose it's got that going for it. The mural here on the wall outside Fagan's, it's called The Snog, and it's by local artist Pete McKee. This is Sheffield City Hall. Pulp played here on the 22nd of October 1995, just over a week before Different Class was released. Some of the songs from that concert were actually broadcast in the BBC documentary No Sleep Till Sheffield. And in 2014, the City Hall was host to the premiere of Florian Habig's film Life, Death and Supermarkets. There's actually a funny story associated with the premiere. At the registry office there was a wedding going on, and some members of the band actually crashed the wedding. So imagine that, you've just got married and one of Sheffield's most famous bands just sort of casually walks in and congratulates you. Not the first time that Pulp have actually crashed a wedding. You've got the default album cover for Different Class, which actually depicts a real wedding, that of Dom and Sharon O'Connor. Now, how that happened was Sharon's younger brother went to university with Donald Milne, the primary photographer for all of the album covers on Different Class. And they asked if Donald could do their wedding photos, and he said yes, but only if he could bring like the cutouts with him. And so the O'Connors ended up with probably one of the most iconic wedding photos in existence. I think Dom and Sharon are still married 27 years on, so, you know, good luck to them. So here I am in the Peace Gardens, just behind Sheffield Town Hall. I'm just sort of chilling out for a while here, just having a look around. So this is the Winter Gardens. I was told by someone I met outside City Hall that I should come here. So I'm just going to have a sort of a little walk around and have a look at things. I surmised that I wouldn't be able to film in the Millennium Gallery. So instead, please enjoy this slideshow of the photographs that I took there, while I try to explain how and why I ended up making this film. This isn't the first time I've actually been to Sheffield. The first time was back on the 8th of December 2012, when I came up here from London to witness Pulp's last UK concert. I was only in Sheffield for one day, and most of that time would be taken up with the concert, so I really didn't have any time to explore. After the concert was over, most Pulp fans were of the consensus that that was pretty much it for the band as a whole. For that reason, I never really thought that I would ever find myself back in Sheffield. That changed in 2022, when Jarvis released his book, Good Pop, Bad Pop. That book and the accompanying exhibition got me thinking about how much of a difference Pulp had actually made to my life. I also realised it had been nearly 10 years since that last concert at Sheffield Arena. So I decided to do something in celebration of that. I'd been making films for my YouTube channel since 2016. Just little short films, usually reviews of different tea varieties. In 2018, however, I started documenting my annual holidays. The first was my first ever trip to Brighton, and in the following years, apart from 2020 obviously, I also visited Bath and Bournemouth. You can sense a bit of a theme here. So I decided that September I was going to go to Sheffield and make a sort of homespun documentary about the city where it all started and what it was like being a Pulp fan in the decade following that concert at Sheffield Arena. On the 22nd of July 2022, a rather cryptic message was posted to Jarvis's Instagram. What do you do for an encore? Within minutes of this message being posted, the entire Pulp fandom seemed to go into a collective meltdown. and messages of speculation appeared across all the social media platforms. We had to wait till the following Monday to get our answer, when Jarvis appeared at a symposium hosted by The Guardian, where he revealed to the waiting Pulp fandom that Pulp were indeed reforming to play a series of concerts in 2023. Though I was clearly elated by this news, it did pose me a significant difficulty in going forward with my film. I had to reassess and reevaluate all of my previous planning and how I would be presenting this film. At several points, I nearly gave up on the project. And if it wasn't for the encouragement of long-term fellow Pulp fan and former Lip Gloss mailing list member Michael Sue, I would have given up. But giving up really isn't a Pulp thing to do now, is it? Before we go any further, I'd like to fill you in on how I became a Pulp fan in the first place. It was 1995 and I was 14 years old. My father had died the previous year. A military veteran with a lengthy career in the armed forces, my father never really adjusted to civilian life. Looking back, it's clear to see now that he was suffering some form of PTSD, a condition which wasn't even spoken about in the late 80s and early 90s, much less treated. So instead, my father turned to self-medication, primarily with alcohol, although I wouldn't rule out any other substances being used. This, of course, took its toll on my mother and myself. But even when he was sober, he had a volatile temper. I don't want to say that my father was always a bad parent. For most of my childhood, he wasn't. It's just that as I got older, his behaviour seemed to deteriorate. These behavioural problems were exacerbated by a series of serious medical issues that he suffered as I was going into my teenage years. This culminated in him being rushed to hospital with pneumonia in early 1994. The resultant illness damaged his heart, and doctors pleaded with him to change his lifestyle, to stop drinking, to stop smoking. Unfortunately, he didn't pay any attention to them. And in August 1994, he died of a sudden heart attack, aged 53. Please don't judge me when I say this, but the only emotion I felt for a long time after my father died was relief and guilt for being so relieved. The year following my father's death was not easy on me or my mother. My mother had her own issues, least of all the fact she was going into the menopause. And at the time, I was being bullied at school. I became isolated and withdrawn and could find no solace in anything. Not the books I was reading or the music I was listening to, which was, at the time, awful chart rubbish, such as E17, whose posters dominated my walls in my early teenage years. Everything was to change for me. On Sunday the 1st of October 1995, I was sat in my bedroom listening to the weekly chart rundown, when all of a sudden I heard this melancholy song echoing out of my radio. I walked over and turned the volume up. The lyrics and the tone of the song seemed to reflect the mood that I was going through at that time, one of sorrow and loneliness and isolation. At the end of the song, the DJ announced that this was the new single from Pulp, Sorted for Ease and Whiz. I had been vaguely aware of Pulp at the time, But the triumph surrounding Common People and their subsequent performance at Glastonbury had seemingly passed me by. The next day, after school, I went to the local art price and picked up both copies of the CD, which was a double A-side with Misshapes. I played them endlessly, revelling in the new music that I'd found. Later, I was to purchase a copy of His and Hers, which was on special offer at the time. And I played that endlessly too. I still have memories of listening to one of the tracks, Do You Remember the First Time, for the first time, and feeling all the hairs on the back of my neck standing up like wires. And to this day, it's still one of my favourite Pulp songs. Later that year, of course, Different Class came out. And that was a whole new experience for me. It wasn't very long after this that my entire music taste completely changed. And I found myself tearing the posters of E17 off my wall to replace them with posters of the bands that were dominating the music scene at that moment. Bands such as Blur and Suede and Radiohead and of course Pulp. I would scour the music press, the NME, the Melody Maker, Q Magazine, Select Magazine and the like, to cut out pictures of my newfound heroes and make collages which also joined the posters on the wall. The first time I saw Pulp live was the 1st of March 1996 at Wembley Arena. It was a few days after my 15th birthday and not that long after the infamous Brit Awards incident. I was concerned that because of the fallout of this event that the concert would be cancelled. But to my relief, it went ahead as scheduled. Now, I can't remember too much about that night. It was a long time ago. But I do remember the lights going dark over Wembley Arena, spotlights on the stage, and the strings from I Spy echoing through the auditorium, suddenly punctuated by Jarvis's vocals. One thing that did stick in mind from that concert was Jarvis making a reference to the events of the Brit Awards. To rapturous cheers and applause from the audience, Jarvis made the statement whilst holding a bottle of water that, unlike some people in the music industry, he did not see himself as a Christ-like figure, and that the water in this bottle was going to stay water. He then proceeded to pour the entire bottle of water over his head. I saw Pulp a further 6 times after that concert at Wembley Arena. At Finsbury Park in 1998, at the fan club concert at Highbury Garage in 2000, and after the reunion in 2010, I saw them at Wireless Festival and Brixton Academy in 2011. In 2012, I saw them at the Albert Hall and, of course, their final UK concert in Sheffield Arena on the 8th of December 2012. And now, after a hiatus of more than a decade, Pulp are once more on tour, and I, for one, cannot wait to see them again. Here's a little bit of politically motivated vandalism I saw outside the Millennium Gallery, and I can't say I disagree with it. I'm outside one of the most famous, if not the most famous, music venues in Sheffield. This is the Lead Mill. And everyone who is everyone has played here. Pulp first played here in 1980
zoom in just so. You can even see there is a music heritage plaque on the wall celebrating that. The last time they played here was 1993, but who knows, maybe next year this could be a venue that they play on their next reunion tour. But the lead mill is in danger thanks to section 25 of the Landlords and Tenants Act. Basically, the people who've been running it for 42 years are facing eviction. Now, I'm from London, and one of the most famous music venues in central London, in the West End, the Astoria, was lost when they built Crossrail, now the Elizabeth line. You know, I'd hate for that to happen to the lead mill, because if you lose places like this, you're losing a part of your culture, and I think that is such a shame. I'm on Paternoster Row, and the building in front of me at one time was the National Centre for Popular Music. It was commissioned in 1996. It opened its doors in 1999 and closed the following year. It is now the student union for Sheffield University. The design of the building was meant to echo kettle drums, but I just think it looks like a set of curling stones, to be honest. Also round here, somewhere between Paternoster Row and Brown Street, is Access Studios, where a lot of the recording sessions for His and Hers took place. And I've been looking around, but I can't find it exactly. I don't know if it's been renamed, or I'm just sort of wandering around looking for it, but I can't seem to find it. The row of windows you are looking at now is Flockton Court in Division Street. It was here in late December 1985 in a bid to impress a girl that Jarvis fell from one of these windows. He broke his wrist, his ankle, and he shattered his pelvis. It was a pivotal moment in Pulp's history, because during his recovery period, Jarvis started working on the songs that would lead eventually to the album Separations, which was kind of the gateway to Pulp's future success in the 1990s.
I'm here at Indigo Resurrection, formerly the Devonshire Cat, and here is a mural of Jarvis Cocker by Paul Staveley. Now at Indigo's other site in Kelham Island, there is a mural of Pulp, and I'm going over to see it now. Usually the Indigo is not open until 5 p.m, but the people who've been working here very kindly let me in to do some filming. This is the Hallamshire Hotel on West Street. Pulp played here quite a few times in the early 80s. I think the last time they played here was 1985, and in 1983 this was the venue for a production of Russell Senior's The Fruit of Passion. This is the River Don, one of the two main rivers that flow through Sheffield. The other one, of course, being the Porter. Here I am at the Indigo in Kelham Island, and this is the Pulp mural by Paul Staveley. So let's have a little look at it in more detail. This is, of course, the last concert at Motorpoint Arena, so I would probably be somewhere down there, but it's quite detailed actually.
So I found another mural by Pete McKee. This one's called Dog Biscuits. So here I am on Sheldon Row, and somewhere around here used to be the Wicker Karate Rooms, which was a disused factory where Jarvis used to live in the early 80s. When he moved from his childhood home, I think about 1982, 1983, the custodian of the Wicker Karate Rooms was a man named Tim Olcard. He was a poet who used to perform in a band called In a Bell Jar, and he used to play keyboards for Pulp sort of around 1983, 1984. The Wicker sort of became a sort of congregating place for all the sort of freaks and misfits of Sheffield. There's some very strange people lived here, including two rival table tennis teams that used to defecate in front of each other's doorsteps when they got annoyed with each other. Let us not forget that the Wicker Karate Rooms served as the inspiration for the song The Wicker Man from Pulp's 2001 album We Love Life. Here's a bit of a better shot of the River Don there. So I'm just walking down the banks of the Don here. I've noticed these sculptures on this little island just in the middle of the river. I'm in Shalesmoor and there's a thunderstorm. It's hammering it down with rain again. Thank you, Thorpe. Along the banks of the Royal Canal, in the female prison, there are 75 women. 'Tis among them I wish I did dwell, and the old triangle, when jingle jangle, all along the banks of the Royal Canal. Day 4 in Sheffield. I'm going to be meeting up with a friend of mine, former Sheffield Star journalist John Quinn. But before I meet up with John, I'd like to show you this place. This is the Washington on Fitzwilliam Street, and between 1996 and 2002 it was owned, or rather partly owned, by Nick Banks. Now, how this came about was back in the mid-90s, the Washington was faced with closure. So Nick and a few of his friends clubbed together and bought it. And even though now Nick no longer owns the Washington, it still looks like it's thriving to this day.
The building you can see here is the Forge, part of Sheffield Hallam University's student accommodation. The poem on the side of the building is called Trashed on Cider and was commissioned as part of the 2005 Off the Shelf Literary Festival. The piece was designed by the Designers Republic, who have worked with Pulp in the past, notably for creating the artworks from all the singles from the original 1992 release of Babies to Common People, and also doing the album artwork for His and Hers, and creating the logo for Different Class. We are back in Paternoster Row for this photograph. The fence at the end of the street marks where the Nelson Mandela building, part of the student union for Sheffield Polytechnic, used to stand. It was here in October 1981 that a teenage Jarvis handed over a demo tape to legendary DJ John Peel. Just over a month later, Pulp were on their way to Maida Vale Studios to record their debut session for John Peel's Radio 1 show. Here's a photograph of a construction worker I took by accident, but I decided to leave it in the film because it does look like he's midway through a funky little dance. This venue is known as Network, but it was formerly known as The Plug. John told me that it was here in 2009 that he went to see Jarvis perform. Around the same time, he also went to see a show by the Pollinates, which featured a post-Pulp Nick Banks on drums.
This is the Marples. It used to be a pub hotel, but now it's a student accommodation. It was here on the 15th of May 1982 that John Quinn first saw Pulp perform. John actually brought me here on Thursday, but I thought I'd have a bit of a closer look. I mean, back then in 1982, I don't think their first album, It, had even been recorded, let alone released.
The building you see here is on Staniforth Road in Attercliffe. Nowadays, it is the headquarters of PJ Taste, a catering and events company. But back in the late 80s, this was the Take Two nightclub. Take Two was the venue of the Groovy Fish Tank, a regular event organised by a then teenage Mark Webber and his friends. They played host to local bands, one of whom being Pulp, on the 21st of August 1987. Mark was to revisit the concept of the Groovy Fish Tank about a decade later, alongside Ben Wallers and Gregory Kirkovitz. However, instead of the emphasis being on live bands and new music, the concept behind this new event was to showcase rare, unusual and cult films that really didn't get the audience that they deserved. And so, the event known as Little Stabs at Happiness was born. Its title coming from a 1966 Ken Jacobs film. Little Stabs at Happiness ran regularly every month at the ICA in London between 1997 and 2000. How I became a patron of Little Stabs at Happiness is actually quite a fascinating story. And it all started in the summer of 1997. Things on the Pulp front had gone quiet since the Mercury Music Award win of 1996, not least because of the departure earlier that year of long-term member, guitarist and violinist Russell Sr. It was about early September, I think. I was about to start as a student at City and Islington Sixth Form College, when one morning I was woken by a dream. In this dream, Pulp seemed to be involved in some kind of photo shoot with the backdrop of a high wooden fence. The dream seemed to focus on Mark in particular, and he was looking very unhappy, miserable. He kept trying to hide his face from the camera. He also had long purple hair and was wearing glasses, but that's not really relevant. It must have been on a Wednesday because I remember getting up, getting dressed and going out to get the weekly music newspapers. When I opened the Melody Maker and looked on page 3, there it was in the bottom right hand corner. Pulp to release new single, Help the Aged, in November. I was astounded to say the least. It seemed that my dream of the previous night had somehow manifested into reality. So I took it as a sign that I should do something. So what I did was write a letter to Mark. It wasn't a deeply profound letter, just a series of questions, really. What's your favourite colour? Do you have a favourite band? What song do you like to play on stage? That sort of thing. I never expected him to reply. Then, a few weeks later, as I was getting ready to go to college, the postman brought the mail. And there it was, his reply. I literally jumped for joy on my doorstep on reading that letter. And while I was on the tube going towards Holloway, I kept reading it and rereading it just to make sure it was real. I passed the letter amongst my college friends during a break in our theatre studies lesson. I was feeling so proud and elated, but little did I know that all too soon something would come along that would take the shine off the day. Somebody, I forget who, indicated another member of my theatre studies class and said, "Do you know that his cousin is the keyboardist in this band?" So I turned to this guy and I said, "Who's your cousin?" And he said, "Candida Doyle." I felt a little bit crestfallen after that, but I tried to make the most of it. And a couple of months later, just before my 17th birthday, he got me her autograph on a paper plate. That letter and the autograph became two of the most priceless objects I would ever own, and I lost both of them in a catastrophic house fire in 2015. The mid to late 90s was still the early days of the internet, and getting information about your favourite bands was still quite a bit of a challenge. There wasn't much social media to speak of, if any, and search engines such as Google were still quite primeval. They didn't really come into their own until the turn of the millennium. During this time, the official Pulp website was transitioning from the Rise Media operated site to a new website operated by Alex Deck, the president of the Pulp fan club. This website didn't really come into its own until the release of This Is Hardcore in March 1998. We could only glean little bits of information about the band from the various music press publications of the day. But for anything verifiable, you needed to be a member of the Pulp People fan club and get the information through the fan club magazine. But the publication of this was seasonal. And anyway, I didn't become a member of the fan club until 1999, when I was a student and had access to my own checkbook. So, how did I find out about Little Stabs at Happiness? Well, even in the dark days of the internet, we still had our resources. We had a news group, alt.music.pulp, and of course there was the lip gloss mailing list. The lip gloss mailing list united Pulp fans from around the world, and through it we shared news, gossip even, and C90 tapes of rarities and sound checks. This mailing list would later evolve into the Boritalia Forum, itself the wellspring of the Pulp Wiki website. It was through several posts on lip gloss that I discovered about Little Stabs at Happiness. And so it was on the 21st of March 1998, I made my way to the ICA for the first time. The main film that night was a pastiche on the American advertising industry called Putney Swope, but to be honest, I don't really remember too much about that film. What I do remember is at the end of the night, I cautiously approached Mark in the DJ setup in the centre of the theatre. There was a little group of people around him, and they were having a conversation, which as I drew near, turned out to be about his nail varnish. I caught the tail end of a conversation in which somebody said 25, and without thinking I blurted out, "You paid £25 for a bottle of nail varnish?" They all turned round and looked at me, and Mark looked up and said, "No, 25 pence." I felt mortified and quickly turned round and left the theatre. However, as I was passing through the atrium, something told me to turn round, and I did. And just as I did, Mark was leaving the theatre. I remember he was wearing a blue jumper, and I called him over. I shook his hand and said I had a really good time that night, and he told me to come back again soon, which I did. Frequently. Going to Little Stabs at Happiness not only improved my cultural knowledge, but also improved my social interaction with people. As I've mentioned before, following the death of my father, I had become very withdrawn as a teenager and was very socially awkward. I mean, I'm still socially awkward now, but not as much as I was when I was an adolescent. Little Stabs at Happiness also helped me with my first year at university. I was a drama student at Aberystwyth between 1999 and 2000. In our first year, we had to make up our credits by choosing modules from another subject. And to keep things in-house, I chose modules from the film and TV course. The first film on the course was Un Chien Andalou by Luis Buñuel and Salvador Dali. I'm not going to give too many spoilers here, but if you haven't seen it, go and seek it out, because it is truly an eye-opening film. The final film on the course was Jodorowsky's The Holy Mountain, which I can only describe as being truly bizarre. Thanks to the tolerance to such visual oddities that I had developed while being a patron of Little Stabs at Happiness over the previous 18 months, I believe I was the only person left in the screening room by the time the credits rolled at the end of the film. Looking back now, I wish I'd taken the advice of my film tutor, Dr. Benjamin Halligan, and had continued with my studies into film and TV into my second and third year. It's very possible that if I had, I wouldn't have spent the next 20 years in the hospitality industry. The building next to PJ Taste was formerly the Spartan Steel and Alloy Works. I don't think it has anything to do with Pulp, but it still has a pretty cool logo. This is just a shot of the hotel where I stayed in 2012.
This is Magna Science Adventure Centre. It was here in December 2002 that Pulp played their final concert for a very long time, headlining the Auto Festival, organised by Steve Mackey. For a lot of us Pulp fans, we thought that Auto Festival was going to be the end. Little did we know that in just under 8 years, the whole Pulp machine would start up again, and we'd have the reunion concerts in 2011 and 2012. This is the Utilita Arena in Sheffield. This is where, on December the 8th, 2012, me and thousands of other Pulp fans congregated to witness Pulp's apparently last concert in the UK. We all thought the book had closed that night, but it seemed it was just the closing of another chapter. Next year, 2023, they're coming back. This is the railway arches in Catcliffe, and this was the one-time location of the Banks family pottery warehouse. Just there, where that window is, that's where Pulp used to rehearse. So many great songs were either written or rehearsed just up there.
The building you see here on the left was the Boardwalk. Originally named the Black Swan, it became known to the locals as the Mucky Duck. A legendary music venue since the 1960s, the Boardwalk hosted many famous bands, including AC/DC, Genesis, and heralded the performance debut of The Clash on a bill that included the Sex Pistols. Alex Turner used to be a barman here, and later trod the boards himself with the Arctic Monkeys. In fact, there are a set of demos from the Arctic Monkeys, which emerged in 2004, that is called Beneath the Boardwalk. It was here in 1999 that John saw Vanini, Russell Sr.'s band, play. I also saw Vanini that year, a month later, at the Camden Falcon. Strangely, I don't believe that Pulp themselves ever played the Boardwalk. Well, not according to Pulp Wiki, anyway. Sadly, due to the owners falling into administration, the Boardwalk was closed indefinitely in 2010. And there are many who fear that the Lead Mill too will suffer the same fate. The mural that you see on this wall isn't actually a mural. It's not painted on. It's actually a mosaic constructed of coloured bricks, forming a secondary wall at the building's end. It's called The Steelworker and was created in 1986 by artist Paul Waplington. The last stop on our journey was the former Sheffield Star building, where John used to work. Like so many reclaimed buildings around Sheffield city centre, it is now student accommodation. When I started this project in late June, early July of 2022, I never imagined for one moment that I would have to address something like this. When one of your musical heroes dies, especially someone who has been part of your cultural makeup for going on 30 years, the feeling you have it's almost indescribable. It hurts. It really, really hurts. But when that person is someone that you've actually met, someone you've had a conversation with, that feeling hits so much deeper. I had the privilege of meeting Steve twice. The first time was the 13th of March 1999. It was at the ICA at Little Stabs at Happiness. They were showing a new print of The Wicker Man as the main film that night. And I hadn't previously seen the film, so I was really looking forward to it. Now, Mark wasn't there that night. He was out in China hosting a similar event at the ICA in Shanghai. Imagine my surprise when both Jarvis and Steve walked in. I presume they'd somehow been drafted in to do DJ duties that night. After the film was over, I went to get a drink at the bar, and as I was passing through the atrium to get back into the theatre where Little Stabs of Happiness takes place, I ran into Steve. And, I engaged him in conversation. It wasn't really meaningful. It was just like small talk, like, hi, how are you? How's the touring going? What have you been up to? And I asked him a question about Marley, his son. How is Marley? And he told me that he was either going to take him to or had already taken him to Leeds Castle. And that always stuck in my head because he didn't have to tell me that. And I don't know why he told me that, but like I said, it always stuck in my head. As a quick aside, that was also the night that I first met Jarvis. And I will always remember that because he had this massive lump of shaving foam just hanging off his left ear. And at some point in the night, I remember going up to him and just kind of flicking it off. And he turned round. And I showed him what I just flicked off for him. And he smiled at me. And I thought that was pretty cool. The second time I met Steve was over 13 years later. It was the 31st of March 2012, and Pulp were playing a concert at the Albert Hall as part of a series of concerts set up by the Teenage Cancer Trust. One of the standout memories from that particular concert was when you got to the venue, they gave you this sort of little like pen light thing, like sort of little torch. And just before This Is Hardcore, Jarvis told us to turn on the little torch lights, and the lights came down on the Albert Hall. And while they had this orchestra to accompany some of the songs, so while the orchestra was playing the End of the Line remix of This Is Hardcore, the lights came down, and all you could see, I was up in the circle, and looking down, all you could see was just this whole galaxy of little lights while the music was playing. And it's probably one of the most magical things I've ever seen at a concert. Now, before the concert, I had arranged to meet some people from the Bar Italia Forum at the Queen's Arms in Queensgate Mews, which is just around the corner from the Albert Hall. So we're in there, we're having a drink, we're chatting away, and out of the corner of my eye, I suddenly see this really tall man walking through the crowd. He just seemed to be like the tallest person in the room at that time, and he was just walking towards the bar, and I sort of nudged the people I was with, and I was going, "That's Steve, guys. That's Steve, guys. Look, it's Steve. It's Steve." And they didn't seem to take any notice. I mean, here was the bass player of the band that they were just about to see, and nobody seemed to take any notice. So I watched him walk out again, and I said to them, "Look, I'm going to go and talk to him." So I ran outside. Steve was with some other guy, I don't know who. I think it might have been Liam, the tour manager, but I can't remember. So I called to him from the steps of the pub and went, "Hey, you Steve?" And he turned round and he said, "Yeah." I said, like, "Hi, how are you?" I said, "I'm fine. I've got to go and play with my band now." And I said, "Yeah, I know. Bye." And he just walked off. And I remember going back inside and telling the others, "Look, that was Steve. You just missed out on an opportunity there." And yeah, that was one of the memories that I'll always kind of treasure. Now, what I'm about to say may seem selfish. It may seem a bit inappropriate in the circumstances, but it's not meant to be. It's just that in hindsight, looking back, I'd really wished I'd asked him for a photograph now.
Day 5, and today is my last day in Sheffield. So today I'm going to take a bit of a hike through the parklands and eventually, hopefully, get to Forge Dam. This is my first stop on my hike today. This is the Ponderosa, and together with Weston Park and Crooks Valley Park, they form the 3 Crooksmoor parks. So I'm going to be headed down this way to Weston Park. This is Weston Park. It's the second of the Crooksmoor parks that I'm visiting today, and I don't want to go into details, but if, like me, you're a Pulp fan, you'll know that a certain significant event occurred here back in 1983. So this is the old wing of the Sheffield's Children's Hospital, and this is where, I think, when Jarvis was 6 years old and contracted meningitis, this is where he was sent for treatment. I mean, this part of the building is quite austere looking compared with the sort of newer wing down the road. But, you know, it must have been quite frightening for a 6-year-old being here. I mean, it's quite frightening looking for someone in their early 40s like me. Here I am outside the Octagon Centre. Again, it's another famous performance venue in Sheffield. Pulp played here on the 29th of April 1994, and John actually did a review for it, and that's up on Pulp Wiki. John actually took me here yesterday, and I did take a photograph, but I couldn't get a really clear photograph of it, so I came back today and I'm taking a little sort of closer look at it. So here I am at Sheffield Botanical Gardens, the next stop on my walking tour of the parks around Sheffield. I'm hoping if I cut across here through the gardens, I'll be a little bit closer to Endcliffe Park. I mean, even though it's now mid-September, still got some really beautiful floral displays here in the Botanical Gardens. So this is the rock garden at Sheffield Botanical Gardens. I think there's a waterfall, but unfortunately it's not running today. So just gonna do a little panoramic shot. And that's the rock garden. Apologies to the arachnophobes. Just saw this little spider climbing down a web, so I thought I'd oh, there she goes. There she goes. Bye bye, little spider. Here I am in Endcliffe Park, and here's the Porter Brook. So I'm going to follow the Porter Brook Valley Trail, and hopefully at the end of it I'll be at Forge Dam. So yes, this is Endcliffe Park. And if I follow this path round by the cafe over there, that should lead me down the Porter Valley Trail. So I'm now in Bingham Park, and I've just been told that Forge Dam is about another half an hour in that direction. So I think I should be able to make it in time for lunch. This is Shepherd Wheel. They used to grind cutlery here back in the day. Unfortunately it's not open today, so can only show you around the outside. Just about see the wheel itself there.
Yeah, and you know, there's someone here at the weekend and we'll start it up and you can see the water gushing round and turning the wheel. Hi, I just met you, saw you looking at Shepherd's Wheel, and it's very nostalgic for me because my dad was the engineer who renovated it in the 60s first time. he worked as the engineer at Isaacson's and Turner, and they made the new wheel and renovated all the inside, and you can see the horses that the men worked on, and so yeah, it's very special place to come and just be.
So do you mind if I ask you your name?
Valerie Phillips.
Valerie Phillips. Thank you so much, Valerie. This is going to be quite a nice part of my film, I think.
Thank you.
So you can't actually see the wheel from here, but you can sort of see the mill race. And so they'd open up the sluice gate and let the water through, and this is where the wheel would turn. I'm on the Whiteley Woods trail now, still following the Porter Brook Valley Trail. Should be another 20 minutes, I should get to Forge Dam. I've taken a little detour. This is Wire Mill Dam. I've made it. I finally made it to Forge Dam. Could not be happier right now. I'm here at Forge Dam Cafe. That's mentioned in the song The Wicker Man. Unfortunately, it seems the child's toy horse ride has been permanently retired, but never mind. I'm just waiting for my lunch now, and then I'm gonna take a walk around the park. Sadly, this is as far as I can go at Forge Dam, but I've got here, so didn't really want to have to go any further. So I think I'm going to turn back now. As you can tell, it is hammering it down again. Glad I didn't leave my hostel any later, because I would have been caught in the storm. So here I am at the McKee Gallery. I've already seen a couple of his murals. He had the Snog outside of Fagan's and Dog Biscuits in Kelham Island. So we're going to have a look at his gallery now. I'm back at the Botanical Gardens and they've got the fountain running. There we go. Just having a little walk around the rose garden. So I'm here in the bear pit at the Sheffield Botanical Garden. It's been hammering it down for most of today, but look at that. That's lovely. That's a lovely lovely little rainbow there.
Sadly, I didn't have time to visit Crooks Valley Park on my way back to my hostel. The light was dying, and so was my battery power.
So here I am in Castle Square, and this is where the famous Sheffield landmark, the Hole in the Road, used to be. Built in 1965, it was demolished in 1994.
The patch of waste ground behind this fence used to be the old castle market, where a teenage Jarvis used to work as a fishmonger back in the early 80s. His exploits there would later inspire the song I Scrubbed the Crabs That Killed Sheffield. Built atop the remnants of Sheffield Castle in the early 60s, Castle Market featured in both the 2006 BBC documentary The Story of Common People and was filmed in 2012 as part of Florian Habek's 2014 film Life, Death and Supermarkets. Castle Market was eventually closed down in 2013 when a new market's premises opened up in the moor. The building was then left derelict until eventual demolition in 2015.
So here I am, where my odyssey through Sheffield first started. The interchange at Pond Street, waiting for a coach to take me back to London. I know I called this film Everybody Hates a Tourist, taken after the line in Common People, but it is definitely somewhat of a misnomer. Everyone I've met in both Sheffield and Chesterfield have been extremely helpful and friendly and have definitely been an asset to me making this film. I don't know when I'll return to Sheffield, but I definitely want to return for a visit, not least because there are some parts of the city I haven't yet explored. But until that time, to the kind people of both Sheffield and Chesterfield, thank you, and live on.
It's day 2 of my trip to Sheffield. It's about 7:30 in the morning, and today, before I can kind of explore Sheffield properly, I don't have to. Excuse me. Hi, is that Sheffield Town Hall?
I have not got a clue. I'm only literally working here for a day. And
Alright, okay, sorry mate. I was wondering, my backup camera kept draining battery. I've realised what it is, that you can still film with the lens cap on.
This is the Hallamshire Hotel on West Street. Backstrap. So here I am, back where my Sheffield through Odyssey. Come on. I know you're tired, but just this one last thing, Sarah, please.
So here I am at the end of my odyssey through Sheffield, back where it started, at the Sheffield Intercourse on Pond Street. Interchange! I don't know when I'll ever be back in Sheffield. I don't know when I'm going to return to Sheffield, but I definitely want to return here at some point in the future. But until...